Well, I want to do a video uh, with a certain sense of urgency or uh, compulsion because of an experience that I had, which I think reflects uh, the situation that we're in, the predicament of the United States and the church, especially, which is this polarization which I think has a lot to do with one side in particular being too simplistic. And I want to be specific. The polls show that a large percentage of Catholics uh, voted for Trump or support Trump, and were in large part probably galvanized and enthused by the idea that he was going to appoint a Supreme Court that would outlaw abortion, and that by doing that, he was going to show himself to be pro-life, and the country would be back on a better course or something because of this pro-life stance by criminalizing abortion or specifically granting the states the decision as to whether to allow abortions or not, which is very sugar. The Jews would say it's crazy and confusing and a hodgepodge because some states are going to allow it, some states are not going to allow it, all kinds of different rules, etc. And usually the wealthier will be able to get safer and easier abortions, as they always have, than the poorer people. And I already did a video on whether abortion should be illegal. And I said basically that one cannot impose a religious view or a metaphysical belief on all women, uh, because in a democracy we have to learn how to live together, uh, granting a level of autonomy to specifically women and their bodies, except insofar as a perhaps a social consensus arrives at perhaps a stage of the pregnancy or some other things that are worked out as a democracy rather than imposed uh, by dictation, by dictate. And without rehashing some of the stuff I did in that video, I want to be very specific about what I experienced yesterday. I've been going to a church, Catholic church. That's the third closest to me. The one that is closest is unbearable. It looks like Disneyland. The pastor there, an ex-Baptist, um, you know, has a lot of money with the congregation and has bought every possible gaudy gadget and tacky statue that he can possibly get his hands on. And they read and they read and they read all these instructions before Mass. I go to 7 o'clock Mass once in a blue moon there on Sunday. Uh, and it's just an awful, awful place. I don't want to talk too much about it. And basically, you win over the congregation with chuckles and funny stuff, and it's very personalistic. The pastor is he could be heading one of these old little Calvary Baptist churches. It's his ego is way in your face there. Then another church is a Franciscan church that is again very conservative, and I think the priests there have a big interest in keeping the donors happy, and they allow one priest in particular to preach there who is completely off the wall as far as you know as far as his views on. He doesn't like the parables. He doesn't like the parable of the prodigal son. He thinks that sends the wrong message. So he doesn't even like the gospel. And his inspiration is obviously, to me, Fox News. But what happened yesterday, I've been going to this church headed by, uh, and I'm not going to be too specific, a foreign pastor from Asia, very zealous, very hardworking, very sincere, a good man with a great vocation, and his assistant is African, and he seems to know the Bible pretty well, and you know seems to be you know intelligent as the other one is intelligent. But the pastor, some maybe a couple of weeks ago, after the leak of the decision on abortion by the Supreme Court, but before the decision came out, he basically got all worked up very sincerely. This is from his depths, I assume, I think, on how we have to adhere to the teaching of the Catholic Church. He's talking to the congregation there that gathers. I get there at 6 in the morning. I've been getting there at 6 in the morning, and I actually have the privilege of praying before the Blessed Sacrament. I'm not huge on Eucharistic adoration, but I like to pray an hour and a half before Mass. So I really enjoyed that. Early in the morning. I would drive, more than 7 miles in the dark. And so he worked himself up into how, if all Catholics were to vote according to the teachings of the church, then all kinds of wonderful things would happen, and all that, because of the numbers of Catholics, etc. He left unclear what these teachings of the church were. The way he doesn't have great English, but the way he expressed himself, it sounded, he was talking really about the teaching, I think, of the church, which when I hear that, I hear, the whole dogmas of the church. I hear the social teachings of the church, Rerum Novarum in 1893, Pope Leo XIII, etc. When the congregation hears the teaching of the church, I suspected that they were hearing the church is against abortion. If we all go out and vote for the candidate who is against abortion, wants to make it a crime, then we'll be great. The teaching of the church will be implemented, and maybe the kingdom of God is around the corner or something. Just so happened that the person chosen to basically railroad a Supreme Court into getting nominated with very evasive and really insincere, ingenuous answers to whether they would uphold Roe v. Wade or not. I understand a lot of this was for the benefit of Senator Collins of Maine, who got fooled, trusting these candidates. And so Trump gets to do what Obama couldn't do, which is appoint, a guy when he had a year to go. Trump got to appoint with his Republicans, three people to the Supreme Court who vote, I think, according to medieval Catholic type beliefs, um, because this happens one way or the other. You vote according to your beliefs. I was sharing on Facebook that when I was at Harvard Divinity School and I applied for work study, I had a long interview with an eminent moral philosopher and psychologist, Lawrence Kohlberg. And he told me that he thought William O. Douglas, one of the justices of the Supreme Court, um, the most liberal, reasoned as a Catholic, or with his Catholic background of social teaching and social justice, etc. He actually applied that Kohlberg thought to very liberal positions. And I think what we have now is the opposite. We have very conservative people applying the most simplistic and anachronic type of Catholicism to their decisions. So, anyway, um, Trump gets to have this Supreme Court. They overturn Roe v. Wade. They give the states the right to legislate on abortion, already with incredible numbers of horrible situations. A 10-year-old girl apparently got pregnant, incest happens, rape happens. I talked about a lot of this stuff, ectopic pregnancies and all kinds of other things, and how the state should not have the right to intervene uh, before a certain point in a pregnancy. As a Catholic, you can reject abortion completely. You can believe a fertilized egg is sacred. But to impose that belief on others is, I think, incredibly un-Catholic and dangerous. And I did speak in my video about the opposition to religious liberty that there was at Vatican II, etc. But what happened was that after this man said that if all Catholics voted in accordance with the Catholic teaching, that we would be able to overturn, uh, Roe v. Wade and all this kind of stuff. We would be able to basically have, Catholic consistent legislation or political leaders, etc., then that would be great. But what he did yesterday was that he explicitly uh, specified that the Catholic teaching he was thinking about was the abortion issue. So that he's reduced Catholic teaching to abortion, and he's to the abortion issue. And again, I want to emphasize it's not some magic wand that eliminates abortion. It's simply a false moral badge that you want to criminalize abortion, and that makes you pro-life and everything is well. Whereas abortion is not going to cease, and there are cases that are morally very complex, like the 10-year-old girl. In other cases, you have to think of the life of the 10-year-old girl. It's not just the unborn, the fertilized egg. But what really got my goat was that this is the 4th of July yesterday, and he's basically telling this congregation that Catholic teaching is basically only about abortion. He doesn't talk about the seamless garment of life. He doesn't say from birth to natural death. He doesn't talk about the death penalty. God forbid he would talk about gun control. Because when you have a congregation typical of a large percentage of Catholics in the US who are basically Republicans, they have been manipulated by very cynical leaders like Trump, who has been manifested in these hearings to have lied knowingly about the election. Or maybe he's deluded, as Robert Barr said. All these Trumpists coming to testify, with apparently two Republicans, Liz Cheney, the daughter of a warmonger, and Kinzinger, all these ex-Trumpists testifying as to the truth. It's all laid out there. What good can come out of such lying by Trump and Giuliani and his unrepentant, crazy people like this Stone guy with a tattoo of Nixon on his back? I mean, this is crazy stuff. One step away from QAnon and half a step away from the Proud Boys that Trump had ready for him, etc. An assault on democracy. And so he's talking to this congregation in a winning manner. This is not a gaudy church, but they do a lot of work there, and I'm sure they get a lot of funds too. And I'm sure that most priests do not want to antagonize audiences, as Jesus did in his first discourse in Luke 4, when they wanted to throw him down the cliff because he implicitly criticized his audience. That's what true Christianity involves, is correcting your brother. The letter of James says that. So how ironic that this guy, and he kept talking about our freedom, but the freedom is not to kill babies. So that he talked about our freedoms and our this and our that, but it basically reduced it to the control. You can't kill babies, which is very charged language for fertilized eggs and in the first few weeks, etc. You're imposing a religious or metaphysical, philosophical conviction that life is sacred from the moment of conception. Even though in my video I talked about so many possible scenarios where you have to intervene and necessarily kill a fetus to save the life of the mother. We've had cases in El Salvador where women have gone to jail for having a miscarriage, that sort of thing. It opens up a horrible can of worms. And to me, it's all as a result of a too simplistic understanding of what Catholic teaching is and what pro-life really means. And what's ironic is that on the very day he gave this bad homily, we had another shooting of people in a parade in Highland Park, Illinois, that I've heard a lot about for many years. So this guy then occurred to this priest to mention other pro-life issues like gun control, assault weapons, the climate, poverty, desperation, police shootings, the weird kid that shot from the roof with an assault weapon, killing 6 people, was arrested. A black guy running away the other day got shot 90 times by 8 policemen. These are pro-life issues. If you simplify things too much because you've been manipulated and you're not too bright, and not ethically developed, then all these other issues, you can ignore them. You're focused on the protection of the unborn that you think you're going to achieve by criminalizing or allowing some states, maybe 26 or whatever it is, states to criminalize abortion. That is how complex the situation is and how simplistic the manipulators and their manipulated little puppets are. And so I was aghast, even though I could sense that this congregation is into this kind of stuff. They're very simple people. There's not one person that can read well in any of these masses. When I see somebody that can't read well, and especially the Bible, meaning they don't know the Bible well, they're uncomfortable with it. They can read it like a newspaper, they can read it the best they can with efforts, etc., but it's a very low level of understanding, and that's why I think education is so important. But what he did, and I was reading it today, it was a confirmation from the Lord to me, because in my morning readings that I do, the spiritual readings before I pray the rosary, I have arrived at the prophet Malachi. And today, the reading that I did or had to do in this ordered reading that I'm doing of the Bible, I read it in Italian, Catholic Italian version, the latest one. I read a passage that I knew well, but it struck me it impacted me when Malachi, the last prophet, says that against the priests, and I do think that Malachi is more into the Levitical circles, meaning like the permanent deacon types, as opposed to the real Sadducite priests who had demoted the Levites. So the Levites are kind of an opposition group. I think later you'll have Sadducees and Pharisees kind of in the same tension. And the priests in Judaism, without the temple, lose most of their power. They still have the prestige. But this is what Malachi says. I'm going to translate from Spanish here. And now to you this order, priests, if you don't listen nor take to heart to give glory to my name, very Deuteronomic expression, which the priests prefer glory, I guess, says Yahweh of Zebaoth, of the hosts, I will cast upon you the curse, and I will curse your blessing. The priests are supposed to bless, I will curse your blessing. And I've already even cursed it already, because none of you takes anything to heart. I'm going to break your arm. I'm going to throw shit in your face. Let's be Anglo-Saxon linguistically here. And shit on your solemn feasts. Like Amos criticized the solemn feasts. And you shall be cast away or swept away with this dung, if you will. You will know thus that I gave you this order so that my covenant with Levi would endure, says Yahweh of hosts. My covenant with him was peace, was life and peace, and I granted them. It was fear or reverence, and he, Levi, feared me and kept reverence before my name. the law, the Torah of truth was in his mouth, or a true Torah, a true teaching. Torah really means priestly teaching. It's later translated into Aramaic da'at as law or nomos in Greek, but Torah comes from pointing or teaching. The true Torah was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found on his lips. Same thing that is said of the servant in Isaiah 53. In peace and righteousness or correctness, he walked with me and got back many or removed many from guilt, because the lips of the priest keep knowledge, guard knowledge, and the Torah is to be sought from his mouth. A true instruction is to be sought from the mouth of the priest, because he is the malach, he is the messenger or angel, which is the name of this book of Yahweh Zebaoth. But you have strayed from the path. Remember, the bishops, I gave a video on this, on Biden and Trump. The bishops, pro-life, I mean, they weren't protecting altar boys from sexual abuse. They were protecting their club, the priests. Pro-life is not just being anti-abortion. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But it's not just stupid, it's dangerous and evil, because it's the carte blanche to then turn away from all the other problems. That's why I get so angry at it, and at the manipulation, and the stupidity. I mean, Hitler manipulated the masses. You have to know history. You have to know how masses are manipulated. We're manipulated all the time. But you have strayed from the path, and you have made many stumble with or in the Torah. In other words, you're not teaching right. You're not teaching right. Have you heard any bishops talk against, buying assault weapons by everybody? You hear the abortion thing a lot. The bishops also very, they like to talk in favor of the immigrants, because they know that in this dwindling church, I mean, most of the churches I go to around, even in Palm Beach County, all foreigners. Very few American Catholics going to church that I can tell. So you have to please your audience, and sometimes it's beneficial you please, you don't want to be against the immigrants. Very opportunistic. I'm always on the lookout. Whenever you are defending something for yourself, and I apply it to myself, I think I'm pretty good at it, but I always say, when you want to believe something, ask, am I profiting from this? Who profits? Uh, as these, I think the ancient Roman saying said, Cicero or somebody. When you're flattered by a thought and you want to believe it, examine it even more carefully. There's a saying attributed to Napoleon, who told his manservant, pack slowly, I'm in a hurry. This is a built-in corrective to jumping to something that you are eager to accept as the truth. I'm reading a great book, finally, Purity and Danger by Mary Douglas, a great Oxford anthropologist who wrote on Leviticus and things like that, and how we need to examine our assumptions and our perception, how we eliminate. We have blinders on it. This tension, I mean, she's just confirming stuff I've been reading about for years. We are uncomfortable with the tension of lack of clarity or with ambiguity. We like boxes. We like keep it simple. So that these priests have corrupted the covenant with Levi, have made many to stumble in the Torah. That is why I too have made you despicable. Yahweh is telling the priests in Malachi that he's made them despicable. I have friends in Mexico that are very worried about the future of parishes after the COVID pandemic. But that's kind of like we say, raining upon wet ground. So many scandals, so many, precisely what Malachi is saying here, have happened that a lot of people don't, the young people don't believe. If they do believe, they're fanatics, they're crazy. Just like the people I see in this church, or some of them go to confession every week. They make the priest be there 2 hours confessing. These are all, this is all evidence of compulsive, obsessive compulsive behavior. I love confession, but you can't just be a fanatic and do this, maybe the Latin Mass, veil on your head, only abortion, lots of Eucharistic adoration. Trump is good. If you can't discern that Trump is a scoundrel, and you can't discern the value of democracy, and you can't condemn an assault on a Capitol or rampant violence and the whole fabric of our society, being so not only so angry but being able to buy so many guns and ammunition. If you can't pay attention to that, you still vote Republican, or you like Trump. That's why I say two planets, and I think I'm on a real planet, not on a fantasy trip planet. And I have made you vile before all the people, in the same way that you have not kept my ways, and have made, we say, you have preferences with people. There's a lot of words for this in other languages, I guess. You have preferences among your people. And I bet you that the donors I was talking about are among the most preferred by many of these priests. You have no regard, you have regard for persons, which you shouldn't. You should be fair. That's why one of the translations talks about partiality. That I really enjoyed the partiality one. The partiality translation says that you have been partial. It says here, and so I make you despised and abased before all the people, inasmuch as you have not kept my ways, but have shown partiality in your instruction. So you pick and choose what is the teaching of the church, and you please the crowd. You kept it simple and comfortable. They're not going to get abortions. They're going to prevent other women from getting abortions, and they're going to feel very satisfied. Prevent, no, they're going to make it a crime, and they think they're going to prevent killing of babies, and they may wind up not only not reducing the number of babies killed, but they may even kill a good number of women along the way. Besides the fact that if they're in favor of the Republican program and you don't want to limit guns, the Supreme Court incredibly, just before the abortion decision, overturned a New York law regarding carrying guns. And every day, the mayor of Highland Park, she spoke very well. Is this the kind of country? This is the pro-life country that we are, where we have 300 mass murders and half the year is over. Oh, focus on abortion and the unborn babies from conception. The shootings are a little mental illness there. It's, that is crazy to anybody. In Italy, there's a lot of spousal domestic violence, and they kill not a lot maybe, but there is enough. But none of this crazy stuff going into schools. Now the Fourth of July parade. What would churches has already happened. I was thinking yesterday when this guy was talking. We're here very early in the morning in a church, but not maybe a good candidate for a gunslinger. But it could happen that somebody goes into your church, your kid's elementary school or whatever, and you haven't said much about that. You're focused on abortion. Isn't that a simple, easy way to be pro-life? I mean, wow, what a country. Very, very stupid and incredibly evil, even though I assume that a large percentage of these, people that vote for the pro-life party, like this priest said one time, the awful priest that I walked away from, that is inspired by Fox News. He goes, I can't understand how any Catholic could vote other than Republican. And that's when I actually kicked my kneeler and walked out of that church. That's the church that's closest to me. And then he followed me to another church. He didn't follow me, but seems like he was ghosting me. And of course, the people love that stuff. The donors. And this guy's reputed to spend his time, and he's old as can be, spend his time with his little shoes traveling all over the world because his rich friends love him. He is being partial. He's showing respect of persons. He's being partial in his teaching, and that brings moolah bucks to him. Simple as that. He's way too dumb to ever think, am I preaching the gospel or am I preaching myself and my comfort? So I found the Malachi reading this morning that was not something I looked for, but that was assigned to me as a confirmation that, unfortunately, by my presence, and it's, I'm the first or second, I'm about the third person to get to the church. Somebody opens it before 6 in the morning. Then there's one or two old, ladies there. Then a man that's very helpful, kind of going around helping. But I'm there in the same place, all these, an hour and a half, and then the mass. My presence there, is that a sign that I am in communion with this congregation of a lot of strange looking people with I've been in this business of the church for 50 years plus, as professionally, as I told a friend of mine. I can smell every flavor miles away. I can look at somebody, and I've said it, I've done it in front of some friends. Opus Dei. You're right. Well, how did you know? I'm a bloodhound for this. After so many years, and I observe closely. I also observe accents and where people may be from, especially in Latin America, all over the world, actually. I'm just interested in figuring things out that way, maybe classifying people. That's not so great sometimes. But I'm open to being, disabused of my notion. And oftentimes, unfortunately, I am confirmed in my notion. And so this congregation is there, and you can say statistically most of these people are probably Trumpers. I mean, I told you, I don't know what video I did. The Focolarini. This is a movement in the church founded after World War II, whose motto is unity. Unity. Being with Jesus alone on the cross, etc. And I went to a big meeting of theirs. and leaders were there from abroad, even from other countries, Italy, and they were saying that Trump was anointed of God. And I went to a Costa Rican friend of mine, I guess, leader in Miami, and I said to him, I just heard some very disturbing things. These people were saying that Trump is anointed of God. A scoundrel. You don't have to watch CNN to see he's a scoundrel. Just look at the guy. And he goes, well, I might not say anointed, but I think he's been raised up by God for these times. And I drove back, I think it was 100 miles from the Vero Beach area, very disappointed. And so statistically, you see that even the people that would be least likely, based on their own mission statement, to favor Trump, fall into this spell that he's the bully we need to attack the bad guys who are anti-life and pro-gay and pro other things like that. And Clarence Thomas has specifically talked about the same things I was talking about, the abortion thing, contraception, gay marriage, all these things. You don't have to get married, you don't have to, but you can't prohibit other people from entering into gay marriage and arranging their financial and other affairs that are the benefit of marriage, civil marriage. Italy has allowed it. But they make these moral things the gist of the moral theology. And they avoid all the other complicated stuff regarding poverty and the planet and health and guns and all kinds of other stuff. That's what's really the big problem. Because living together, you're going to have to accept people different than you. And you have to systematize where your liberty stops and mine begins, etc., in a rational manner, not by fiat from above, especially by railroading and manipulating the Supreme Court, especially when they lie and are not upfront until they get into the power, and then they reveal that they are wolves who had dressed like sheep. That's the way I look at it. Because the real issues are life and death and quality of life and social fabric. All these things, to me, Trump destroyed the social fabric, broke up many friendships, lied and destroyed the notion of truth. That's a pro-life issue. If you have no notion of truth and you think that you just put your trust in one bully that's going to save you, and whatever the bully says, I sign up for because I trust by faith this bully. You should attempt to trust your reason if you can develop it, not a bully. You may say, this is a good man. I think Biden is a good man. I think Biden is past his prime. I think he lacks some of the energy that is needed. But he's not a lying scoundrel like Trump. That's a clear choice. And he won the election. So Trump has even attacked our trust in elections. He was saying this before he lost. He was saying, I think it's going to be rigged. And then all these masses, millions and millions of people, the same kind of people that apparently watch these shootings and say, oh, normal day in America, a little mental illness. But maybe give some money for the mental illness, but don't stop any guns from being sold. And the Supreme Court is behind them in overturning restrictive gun laws. To me, this gun thing, the Second Amendment, I've said it, well-regulated militia, awfully worded, with that bad comma in there, the right of the people to bear arms. This course has an individual right to bear arms, and it apparently is almost open-ended. As I said, have a law degree from Harvard Law School. Took 2 courses on constitutional law, and the Constitution has been amended and has had some awful things regarding blacks and women and all kinds of other stuff that is subject to change. And that's why we need to go out and vote. That's my final conclusion. Biden is saying that the angry people are the ones going out to vote, and the angry people are the ones that want to choke everybody else because they're so angry. Whereas other people are, lullified or lullied into this apathy. But they still went out and voted and beat Trump. But we need to really, really go out and vote and tell dinosaurs that their time is up. But it's 2 planets. I try to do a little bit with these videos and maybe some other ways at my age and with my experience and studies and the people I've been around. I try to share it. 6 different countries that I've lived in. Trust me, it's not just this bubble of of this space where you can fantasize, and anything that they feed you just swallow. Even if it's a priest, very earnest, sincere, good man, incredibly simplistic and manipulative, and maybe even opportunistic. Because if you piss off that congregation, and especially the money people, very few people are willing to be crucified. I kind of got crucified at the seminary when the same kind of people I'm against, wanting to be priests, turned against me without my ever getting into politics. They just were against me because they knew I wasn't a fanatic Trumper, or in those years anti-Obama. I was not. So they cast me out from a job I was eminently qualified for, teaching scripture. Seriously, not coddling these baby seminarians that wanted to be pampered and get all the benefits of being part of the clergy. A lot of these guys, it was either that or flipping burgers at McDonald's, I'll be honest with you. There were people there with mental illnesses, people there under severe medication. The only thing that kept you out was maybe a criminal conviction, but you had to allow everybody to enter. Basically, you didn't have enough candidates, and they become fanatics, and they do the exact same thing Malachi condemns the priests in his time for. And I'm going to stop there, just urging people to think and to vote. I think my 37 subscribers, if that's what it is, or 36, are probably, I'm preaching to the choir, but